Welcome back to Game Theory 101. I'm William Spaniel. Today's topic is cartels. Let's begin by recapping a couple of important points from the last lectures. Under Cournot competition, each firm produces until its marginal gain is zero, given the expectation of the other firm's production. Total production here is relatively high. That's because when one firm increases its quantity produced, it is internalizing all of the benefit of the additional profits that come out of that, while only internalizing a portion of the consequences, namely the price going down. And indeed, prices are relatively low here. And as a consequence of that, the total profits are also relatively low. Compare that to what happens under a monopoly. Here, the monopolist firm produces an amount that maximizes its own profit without having to think about anything else. It doesn't have to care about another firm's production because there is no other firm around. Total production is relatively low, prices are relatively high, and total profits are also relatively high. If you look at the comparison between the two, you might think to yourself that both firms under a Cournot duopoly would benefit by forming a cartel. Instead of producing those duopolist quantities, each could produce half of the monopolist's total quantity of production. As a result, they would be having the outcome associated with a monopoly, so total profits would be higher. An example of this sort of cartel behavior is OPEC. If you've never heard of OPEC before, this is an organization that has many countries that produce oil. And the purpose of OPEC is to convince all of these countries within the cartel to reduce their quantities produced. With less being produced, oil prices will be relatively high, and in theory, all of the countries within the cartel will benefit. Now, sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. A clear example of cartel failure happened in March 2020, right before the COVID pandemic really took over. Saudi Arabia and Russia had a disagreement on how to cut quantities of production, and as a consequence, there was a war between the two in terms of oil production. Oil production spiked, and as a consequence, prices went down. So we might be curious to understand why sometimes cartels work and sometimes cartels fail. Well, there's a clear reason why cartels might fail. There's a credibility issue here. Given a monopolist's total quantity, each firm would individually profit by increasing their own production further. They want to take advantage of the fact that the other firm has cut its production. This is, in effect, a prisoner's dilemma. Both parties are better off if they can cooperate, in this case by reducing production, but the individual incentives mandate that, at least in a myopic short-term sense, each would prefer to not cooperate, given the other's cooperation, and rather defect on the agreement, which leads both parties to do worse than if they had both cooperated. We know from our study of prisoners' dilemmas that sustaining cooperation is impossible if the parties only play the game once, or, in addition to that, any finite length of time. But if you've had some experience with game theory, you might also know that repeated play can solve this problem as long as the game does not have a fixed ending. So that is how we are going to be thinking about cartels in this lecture. A repeated game between two firms, and see if they can sustain cooperation by reducing production quantities, and thereby increasing the profits to go around for everyone. The setup of this game is going to look like this. We'll have two firms playing an infinite horizon game. In each period, both firms simultaneously choose a production quantity Qi at marginal cost C. So we're going to have identical marginal costs, and you'll see that this is basically the same sort of game that we've been studying before. In every period, you're just producing a production quantity. That's it. The price is the same function as before. It is some constant A minus Q, the total quantity of production. But new to this, we have a discount factor. we need to think about how the firms care about time, because we're not just looking at a single snapshot. There's a game being played today, there's a game being played tomorrow, and so forth. So the discount factor is some value between 0 and 1, representing how much we care about today versus tomorrow versus the next day. So in every subsequent period, we'll be multiplying the payoffs for the next period by a factor of delta. And because delta is a number between 0 and 1, that means we care more about profits today than tomorrow, than the next day, and so forth. As usual in these sorts of repeated games, the previous period's choice is going to be publicly observable, so each firm can see what the other firm has done. And the goal for both firms is to maximize their time discounted profits. To make things a little bit cleaner here, I'm going to make a substitution about that A value and the marginal cost C. The A value at some points will take on a quantity of 24, while the marginal cost will equal 0. As I'm going through a lot of the math, I'll keep the things in terms of A and C as much as I can, but you will see that eventually this gets very complicated. And while we could do this in terms of a general A and C value, it will be easier to display what's going on when we have specific quantities. And indeed, when you're seeing many homework problems on this sort of topic, you will have specific values to work with in your classes. Okay, so how do we get cooperation to work? Well, what we're going to be studying is the availability of what is known as a Grimm trigger strategy. Here's what that is. You begin by producing half of the monopolist's quantity. So from before, in previous lectures, we have found that the monopolist quantity is A minus C divided by 2. And if you make the substitution there, you get that the total monopolist quantity is 12. So for the per firm quantity, that's just taking 12 dividing by 2, and we get 6. So in each stage, each firm is supposed to produce 6. Then, in every subsequent period, you continue to produce that amount of 6 as long as everyone else has done so previously. So as long as we're cooperating on reducing output, we continue to reduce output. We stay at 6 each, so that we're producing, in total, the monopolist quantity. But we need to be able to enforce that. What happens if someone tries to cheat on the deal? Well, if you try to cheat on the cartel, if anyone at any point has produced anything else than what they are supposed to, you switch to producing the duopolist quantity for the rest of time. And we know that each firm in a duopoly will produce A minus C divided by 3. That's what we found when we were first looking at Cournot duopolies. And so if we substitute the values, we get a quantity of production of 8. So each firm is going to produce 8 instead of 6. So you can see how this is a punishment strategy. Instead of only producing 6, you're ramping up production to 8. So that value of 2, the difference between, is what you are cutting by forming the cartel. Okay, so we understand what a Grimm trigger strategy looks like. Next question to ask is whether the cartel is sustainable. So the first thing to ask ourselves is what happens if you follow the cartel's rules? Well, by following the rules, each firm captures half of the monopolist's profit in each period. And again, going from what we've learned before, the total monopoly profit per period is A minus C squared divided by 4. So if we calculate the per firm per period profit and substitute in those values, we get a total profit per firm per period of 72. The alternative is to cheat. And specifically, if you cheat, the best you can do is by maximizing your profit for whatever the current period is, and then suffering the consequences of having to produce the duopoly outcome, where you're getting a duopoly profit instead of half of the monopolist profit. So the first step to calculate what this alternative is, what your payoff is for cheating, is to calculate the maximum profit for this particular period. So if we're just looking at a single period and a single firm's profit, let's do it for firm 1. Firm 1's profit function is what you see on your screen there. It's A minus the total quantity produced times firm 1's quantity minus the marginal cost times firm 1's quantity. So if we're thinking about this from firm 1's perspective, whether firm 1 likes to get the cartel outcome or would prefer to cheat, if they are going to cheat in this period, they should be trying to maximize this function. Well, we know what firm 2's production is going to be if it is trying to implement the cartel. So we can substitute that quantity into the initial payoff function. And that gets us our second line. Then we need to figure out what firm 1 actually wants to produce. So the way that we do that, of course, is by maximizing this function. We take the first order condition. That is, we take the derivative of the second line and we set it equal to 0. Then to figure out what firm 1 actually wants to produce, we solve for Q1. That's the fourth line. And when you do that, we get Q1 equal to 3/8 A times A minus C. Now that we have firm 1's total quantity of production when it wants to cheat, we can insert that solution into the profit function. And you can see that once you are inserting 3/8 A minus C, this is where the algebra starts to get very complicated and why putting in specific values is relatively helpful. And in fact, when we substitute A equal to 24 and C equal to 0, we get that the profit here for firm 1, if it wants to cheat, the way it maximizes its profit for that particular period, it's going to get a value of 81. The second step of calculating the total payoff for cheating is to calculate the profit for each following period. We can do this using what we know about the duopoly equilibrium profit. In fact, the equilibrium profit for a firm in this sort of situation is A minus C squared divided by 9. And once again, if we substitute A equal to 24, well, we get a total profit in each of these duopoly periods of 64. This is making the trade-off pretty clear. By following the cartel's rules, the firm earns 72 in every period. By cheating, the firm earns 81 for the initial period and 64 for every subsequent period. So the question is, do you want to get this little bit extra right now and suffer the consequences later? Or do you want to get the nice medium payoff all throughout time? Well, this is where the discount factor comes in. So the calculation that we need to figure out to see when the firm prefers playing by the cartel's rules is to check when the total profit under playing by the cartel's rules beats what you would get by cheating. On the left-hand side of this inequality, we have firm 1's total profit for every single period all added up, if it's playing by the cartel's rules. It gets 72 today, 72 tomorrow, 72 the next day, and so forth. And if you know a little bit about geometric series, the way that you sum up all of that value that is being discounted every period by the parameter delta is you take the quantity that is being given in every period, which is 72, and divide by 1 minus delta. If you're not sure where that number is coming from, how you would get to that calculation, check the video description, and I'll have a link to discount factors and how they work. You get all of your answers, all of your questions answered there. So the left-hand side, again, to recap, is the total profit if you play by the cartel's rules. The right-hand side is what you can get by cheating. Specifically, for right now, for this current period, you get a value of 81. Then in every subsequent period, you get a value of 64. So the way that we measure that, every value of 64, tomorrow, the day after, all of those days other than right now, other than today, is by multiplying that quantity 64 by delta divided by 1 minus delta. Again, check the video description if you're curious where that's coming from, if you're not familiar with it. All we need to do to figure out if the firm 1 wants to play by the cartel's rules is check to see when this inequality holds. So if we multiply both sides by 1 minus delta to get rid of the denominators, and then we move delta to one side and everything without delta on the other side, and then solve for delta, we get delta greater than 9 divided by 17. If this is the case, firm 1 prefers playing by the cartel's rules. If delta is greater than 9 divided by 17, the cartel looks good to firm 1, and it wants to play by the firm's rules. It's within its own incentives to do what the firm wants it to do, and play by the cartel's rules. Of course, the same thing is working with firm 2. Firm 1 and firm 2 are identical in this game, other than how we have the subscripts of 1 versus 2. So it's also the case that firm 2 is willing to follow the rules of the cartel as long as delta is greater than 9/17. So the conclusion here is that if both firms are sufficiently patient, that is, delta is larger than 9/17, then the cartel is sustainable. If delta is less than 9/17, it will not work. It will fail. Okay, that wraps up this lecture on cartel behavior. Hope you enjoyed it, and hope to see you next time. Take care.